Hello and welcome back to Just Follow Joy. My name's Ariana, not Joy, and I'm a human design guide and teacher. And today we're learning all about modern astrology from the lovely Susan Miller. So if you don't know Susan, she's an astrology icon, very well known in the field. She's been studying and practicing astrology for more than 40 years, and her website, Astrology Zone, was founded in 1995 as one of the first online resources for horoscopes. Nowadays, it's visited by 13 million readers every year. In addition, Susan has been and is a regular monthly contributing editor to major publications like Elle, InStyle, Vogue, and more all around the world as their astrological expert. She's worked with many major names and brands such as Louis Vuitton, and actually we didn't talk about this in the episode, but I think this is so cool. She helped design an astrology themed trunk for Louis Vuitton's 200th birthday, which I just think is so cool. And then it was like sold in a bunch of boutiques all around the world. She's also been recognized in the astrological community by receiving the Regulus Award, which is the highest honor given to an astrologer for their contribution to the field of astrology. So Susan really knows what she's talking about. She is a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and it was so fun to connect with her because I mentioned this in the episode, but she's actually the first astrologer I had ever heard of, and she was the first person whose horoscopes, monthly horoscopes, I ever read. And we talked about so much in this episode that I was like, I don't I don't know what to put in the show notes here because all of this is so good, and I kept finding these nuggets. I'm like, oh, this is a highlight. This is a highlight. And we talked about everything from how she started Astrology Zone and how that connects back to her chart, to what part of your chart to look at to figure out your career path and where you can find your career success and basically what you're here to do, to what we can all expect from the year of 2025. And spoiler alert, it's some really good stuff. So you're going to want to hear this. We also dive into my chart just a little bit, just a little bit. And we're going to hop right into this. But before we do, a quick reminder that if you like Just Follow Joy, if you love Just Follow Joy, it would be so, so helpful if you could like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, if you could leave a 5-star rating and review there, that would be really, really helpful in order to get this out in front of other people who will like it, love it, and learn from it as well. Anyway, that's it from me. So let's go learn from Susan. All right. So we have Susan here with us. Susan, I already told you I'm so excited to talk and I'm so glad
Oh,
to have you here.
thank you for having me. You have such an enthusiastic fan base. I read up about you.
Thank you. Oh, so do you. I was telling Susan, everyone, when I was emailing her about how like you were the first astrologer I ever knew about
Oh,
because I
really?
was yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
Yeah, and my sister was the first person to find you, and it was like this family thing because I remember my sister would be like, "Mom, did you read the new Susan Miller this month?" And I'm like, "Who is that?" And she's like, "Oh, she's an astrologer. I don't know if you'd be interested." And I was like, "Well, maybe I want to know." And so I read them, and I was so young, I didn't know how any of that stuff lined up. But yeah, it's first one, and so my
Were you
mom
a
and my sister,
teenager? How old were you at that point?
I was like 16, I think, when I
That's
first found out.
perfect.
Really?
Yeah, because teenagers are into self-discovery and learning about their talents and their wonderful attributes. Yeah, that's when most people get into astrology and they're 14, 15, 16, around there. Yeah.
Well, that's a fantastic segue into the questions I'm going to ask you right now, which are how did you get started with astrology? What was your story with that?
My mother was truly a scholar. She studied and studied before I was born. She didn't want to study astrology, but she was moving from a small town upstate New York to Manhattan. And her sister was kind of freaking out, saying, "You can't leave. You're my best friend. I love you." And her sister said, "What if we take a course? And then we'll have to do the homework on the phone all the time. And it'll be great. It'll be like you're still here." And my mother, being a Gemini, loved the idea of study. What are we going to study? And she said astrology. And my mother said, "You got to be kidding. That doesn't work." And my aunt said, "Yes." And then she said, "But Erica," my mother's name was Erica, "if you don't do it, I can't keep studying because you got Papa's gene. You're good with math." My grandfather was an engineer, and my mother was very good with math. And I won't have anybody to do my charts. And so she was crying. And so my mother said, "No, it's okay. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it." but I'll show you why it doesn't work. But they studied 8 years together with this correspondence class, which was in California, in Oceanside. It was the Rosicrucians, which is considered the primo school. Most of the teachers were from Europe, and they were amazing. I had known she had gone to that school, but I didn't know how special it was until much later when other people told me. And she studied for 8 years. And she said, Susan, I kept saying, I want to learn. I was born with a birth defect. I grew up in hospitals. When I was 14, um, everything ruptured in my left leg. I was bleeding internally at a horrific rate, but the doctors didn't have the MRI levels that they have now. They couldn't tell what was wrong with me. And before I got to this special doctor, the other doctors told me I was making it up. I didn't want to go to school. I needed a psychiatrist. I mean, it's so hard to be in so much pain and having people not believe you.
Yeah.
But my parents did, because when I would get an attack, I couldn't move even an inch in the bed for 8 weeks. And all children, if they're making it up, are going to sneak out of the bed and get their books, or when they're little, their dolls and crayons and stuff. No, I never moved. And I was in the hospital 11 months, and they had to paralyze me to save my leg and to save me. And so they had to tourniquet me so tight, they knew the bottom of the leg would be damaged, that the nerve, I had a drop foot and no ability to wiggle the toes or anything. And so the doctor said, but you're young. We're going to bring that back. The interns didn't believe him, and they said, don't bet the farm on that. And he got mad at them. I did go through 2.5 years of physical therapy, and it did come back. But while I was going through all this, I had a great big brace, crutches, lived in a walk-up brownstone in Manhattan.
Man.
And, I wanted to know if I'd look like everybody else. Would I have a normal life? Would I get married and be able to have children? Yes, I have 2 daughters. But it was all up in the air. So I said to my mother, please teach me astrology. And she said, no. And she must have said no 100 times. I would keep asking. She kept saying no. I said, why are you saying no? You're going to start reading for your friends. You're going to think you know what you're doing. You have to study 12 years before you will be proficient. And if you study with me, I'm not going to let you read anybody's charts. And no friends. I said, I don't have any friends. I'm not in school. I never went to high school. Did homeschool, which a teacher came for 2 hours a week. That's one for math, one for English. I changed it to math because teaching yourself trigonometry is hard. And, so I had the teacher teaching me the math. I taught myself English. And then I went to NYU and studied business. So it did work out, but those years were grueling and painful. And I just wanted to know if all this work at the hospital was going to be for something good, that I would walk and actually go to a prom and look normal and not limp. And it did all work out. And my mother did teach me. And she said, I must always be in the room when you read the chart while you're learning for those 12 years. And I'm half Italian, half German. My mother's side is the German side. My father's side is the Italian. And upstairs in our brownstone, grandma lived with my 3 aunts. It was, in those days, they didn't cut apartments into little shoe boxes. It was large. And there were 3 boys, too, their brothers, including my father. Actually, there were 4. And my grandmother was always cooking. Everybody was coming and going. And someone was always there to say, do me. And so I got lots of practice. And
Yeah.
when she said I could finally, read charts, I was very happy. And I would always do them for free. I was an agent for commercial photographers, and I was calling on creative, art directors and creative directors and art buyers. And I was representing photographers. I have found that the more creative a person, the more interested They are in astrology because they live their life creatively. They want to push the borders of their life back and have a richer, more, happy experience and use their talents well. Astrology is such a good, I would say, creative brainstorming tool for a problem, but also for a non-problem. Like, what can I do with my life? How can I have a life of purpose? So I just love it. Every month, I feel like I'm cracking the code. I say to the
Mhm.
little planets, "What are you trying to tell me this month for each sign?" I make, if you saw my folder, um, like this month I did write 40,000 words divided by 12 signs. For air, we had a new moon at the end of March and it was an eclipse. So you're still going to feel it in April. And then you have a full moon around I think it was the 12th. And then we have another new moon on the 26th or 27th, I should say, of April. So I had to make a new moon, a full moon, a new moon. That's three for Aries times 12 signs. So that's 36 charts. And I need to look at them the way a photographer looks at a Polaroid. I need to look at the sky because the message the stars are trying to tell me is different for every sign and for every lunation, different from a new moon, from a full moon, and so forth. And then I have to look at the retrograde planets, and there was a lot this month to cover.
Yeah.
And when I have difficult aspects, I can't hide it because I'm afraid you'll go in and ask for a raise on that awful day or have a talk with your boyfriend or girlfriend on that day. And I have to be sure you're not broadsided by difficult aspects. So I need to tell you about them before you encounter them, but not so terrifying that you're afraid to leave the house, because we can handle what God gives us. We can handle it. We just have to know about it so that we're not hit by surprise.
Exactly. And that's what's so lovely about knowing about astrological forecasts is, I mean, my good friend is an astrologer and we talk all
Ah,
about how just understanding what you're living in right now and what you're working with, how helpful that can be. And it's never a doomsday. I mean, at least not from the way that you
no,
I
no,
perceive
you
it.
can handle it. There is a plan for us. It's when I wrote Planets and Possibilities, it was my first book for Warner Books, and it was 450 pages, but it's no longer in print. I'm going to try to see if I can bring it back myself. I bought the rights back. I looked at all the myths associated with the signs and described all the signs and went into the history of astrology. It was a very thorough book. And when I got to Pisces at the end, I started to cry. I'm sitting alone in my apartment, and all of a sudden I'm bursting into tears because I realized how astrology fits together, how all the pieces all of a sudden made total sense. And was I supposed to know this? Was what I was asking myself. I was seeing the underpinnings of the universe. And was I supposed to know that? What a tremendous responsibility. And so when I write, I have to be careful. First of all, I have to be accurate. And then well, the internet gives you room to explain things because astrology can be misleading if not enough backup information is given to you. So I have the room for it. But I feel I write for people who have no knowledge of astrology, have never known anyone who knew it, and to show them what it could do for you because it can make you successful and happy. My mother always would say, you have to go with the cycles of the universe. Otherwise, it's like walking into an ocean with the surf straight in, like facing a concrete wall. But if you're going with the cycles, it's not hard. Life isn't supposed to be gruelingly difficult. There are answers to every question, and you have to just go with the cycles. So that's why I like astrology.
I love it. And that's why I like astrology. And do you mind if I ask you your sun, moon, and rising? Obviously, there are so many other parts of your chart that But it's funny.
My moon is in Virgo, which is why I read in such detail.
Yeah.
And I have Gemini rising. If a person doesn't have Gemini or Virgo in the chart, they're probably not going to make it as a writer. Just like if you want to be an actor, you need some Leo,
Hmm.
somewhere, some strong Leo. There's, if you want to go into medicine, Scorpio or Virgo, or if you want to be someone who comforts the sick, then it's Cancer or Virgo. Mother
Hmm.
Teresa was Virgo.
That's
Yeah.
unsurprising to me. My
Yeah.
acupuncturist, Virgo.
Oh, they are. You know what? It's so funny. I don't get that many massages. Somehow, when I go to LA, I don't know, I must have extra time. And I go to the Four Seasons and I get a massage. And I can usually tell the sign of the person by their hands. And I have found water signs are best. Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. You can get a massage therapist who's one of those signs. They're brilliant. I didn't know I had that talent because I'm not one of these people that guesses people like in a circus or something. I never do that.
Mhm.
But with massage therapy, I could tell. Um,
Wait, okay. So I wouldn't ask this question before, but for a Leo moon, Libra sun, Cap
oh,
rising then.
you should be with celebrities. You should be working with them. Well, they're probably on your show. They love you. You understand entertainment in a way that most people don't. My daughter has Leo on the midheaven.
Mm.
And she works in Los Angeles. She just finished the Golden Globes as the executive vice president of talent. It was her first
Whoa.
assignment. She's working on the American Music Awards right now, which will be telecast at the end of May. I think May 26th, and J Lo will be the host that Diana chose, and she accepted. Um,
Go
but it's
Diana. Oh my gosh.
we're all here in New York saying, "Oh my gosh, she went to Hollywood and cracked it open." She
Yeah.
was James Corden's producer for Carpool Karaoke and won 6 Emmys for that. She
Wow. Okay.
even went to the White House when Michelle Obama wanted to sit shotgun next to James and had Miss Elliott in the back seat. And Michelle said to James, I'm a little worried about my singing voice. He said, Don't worry, we'll drown you out. Don't worry, don't worry. Me and Mrs. Elliott will be so loud. Don't worry, don't worry. And it came out so cute. But the Secret Service wouldn't let them go down Pennsylvania Avenue. They had to stay in the White House grounds, going around and around the vegetable garden. But then Mrs. Obama invited everybody in for a photograph, and she sent everybody it later when she signed it, after she signed it. So it was really a nice experience.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh, I love that. And actually, something I wanted to say before, I didn't want to interrupt you because I was enraptured with your story, but so I actually am in northern San Diego and I have passed by the Rosicrucians before and I've passed by the grounds
Wow.
and been like so drawn to it. I'm like, that is such a I just love that kind of old missionary style. And I was like, I don't know why, but I really want to go there. So it's crazy that you
Oh,
said that.
wow. So you know where it is.
Yeah.
They're very philosophical. My mother didn't just teach me encyclopedic, but what does it all mean? And, and I don't do psychological astrology. Some astrologers only do that or only do medicine. If you have a problem you want to know more about, they only do medical astrology. I do people and relationships, but I don't try to psychoanalyze you. I feel you probably have a very good pulse on what happened growing up and how you feel. I don't think you need me for that. You need me to be predictive. Do you know there are astrologers who refuse to do predictive astrology? And I'm like, why? To me, that is the beauty of astrology. That's what helps you so much. But,
Mhm.
to each his own, and that's great. And that's what makes the world interesting.
I love that. And you just spoke like the words of I was talking with Susan about human design before, and she was like, literally, what is that? Because it's a newer system. And And that's exactly it. Like everyone just like do your thing. That's what the world makes the world go round, and that's what you're here to do. And astrology says that too, right? With the
Yes.
imprinting of
We all
our,
come to the
yeah.
table with gifts that we share with other people. You know, I had to learn quickly in life because I couldn't walk that I would have to depend on other people. And it's hard. You know, I mean, if I would depend on my mother to get a book across the room. I couldn't walk at all. I was in agony and it would be swollen and even after the operations, it was really rough. And I would have to depend on other people. I have made peace with that. We're all here to help each other, and that it's okay to ask someone to help you. You know, we all want to be independent, and I had to learn that there were some things I just couldn't do alone,
Hmm.
and you have to make peace with that, and you have to reward that person, of course. Like just now, before I came on with you, one of my makeup glass bottles smashed on the floor. I I never have a bad back. This week, I must have picked up a very heavy box in publishing that I tend to do that all the time. And I can't bend over. And now I'm looking at this. It's oily and it's on the floor. It could be slippery. There's glass there. What am I going to do? And I thought of different people, but I called the handyman that works freelance in the building, and I paid him, and he came right away. And I was so grateful. He said, "Don't worry, it's not even slippery. I got all the glass up. It's perfect." And you know, there are times you just have to. I literally can't bend over. My back is killing me. But you know, that'll go away in a couple of days. I'm sure it will. But I couldn't leave it there.
Yeah.
So we have to get used to asking for help when we need it. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Can I ask you, do you see a part, because this is fascinating to me, like your whole journey with your career, but also with your health. Do you see that reflected in timing in your birth chart? I'm assuming so, like looking
Oh,
back.
yeah. I mean, my mother, she would look at me with sad eyes and say, "Susan, the good goes away, but the bad goes away too."
Hmm.
And I never forgot her saying that. And she said, "When you're 14, this is going to go away." I said, "I don't think so." But remember, she was my mother. She didn't want to see me go through an ordeal. But she did say, "When you're 14, this will disappear." Well, I got the biggest attack at 13 and 11 months. And by the time they were done with all the testing, I was 14. And they still didn't know what was wrong. So they had to just go in with an experimental. And I had an orthopedic genius doctor, but he was called on to do a massive circulatory, veins and artery operation. And my veins are running over bones and wrapped around nerves and totally malformed in the left leg. They told me there were only 14, no, actually 47 cases in history, but some people had it in the chest or the head, and then you only survive one rupture. You don't survive. And they said, "You're lucky because the leg contained it." And so I was. And I was lucky that I had a brilliant doctor who had written textbooks and he knew what to do. And but I kept breaking the thigh bone after the operation 4 times. And by that point, I had children, and I would have to go into the hospital for 8 months while the bone was in traction because they were too afraid I'd bleed to death if they went in again. And I said, "You have to go in." I I've broken the leg in my house just walking across the rug. I I can't live like this. If I have to die, I will die. My mother said she will take care of the children. I cannot live this way. I can't go anywhere. I can't even go downtown to a department store. I don't know when it's going to break.
Mm.
And he said, "I don't know, Susan, this isn't good. But we'll do it." And I did die on the table when they got me back. But they found I had no marrow, that the malformed circulatory system wasn't feeding the bone just in that leg, the left leg. And they did get the steel in, and that changed my life because then I had certainty. And
Hmm.
people need a certain amount of certainty in their life. You know, to this day, though, when I go out at night, I use a smaller purse. You know how it is, and you're transferring, some cash in, some credit cards, but I always have to put in my insurance card and my ID. I mean, I
Hmm.
can never, ever leave the house without it. And I don't think most people have to worry about that, but it's always in my mind that something catastrophic could happen and I won't know it's coming. And I just have to prepare. It's unconscious. Like I know where everything is in the house because I've been in situations where I can't walk, so I have to tell people it's the left drawer on the side near the back. Like I would have to direct people, and I always knew where everything was, almost with a photographic memory, but be very deliberate about where I put things so that I could get the help I needed and keep going. I mean, I've had really strange things. On April, I'm sorry, September 17th, 2023, I went completely blind in both eyes due to an infection, similar to what Elton John has now. And my doctor said, I don't know if this is going to go away. I said, don't worry. I have a good chart. It will go away. And you're doing everything you can. So let's be positive. But I got my eyesight back by December. So it went from September 17th until the beginning of December. But I had signed a contract. When someone asks me to do work for them, we sign a contract. So I told my children, I'm going to Kansas City. They said, what are you, crazy? You can't even walk to your bedroom. I said, well, no, I sort of can. And I'm prepared. I know the material. And Valerie, my assistant, is going to come with me. I got her a room in the hotel, and she'll be with me in the airport, so I won't go to the wrong gate and wind up in the wrong state. And I did go. It was a big success. You got to keep going. And I'm not good at dictation. I'm terrible at it. I like to write. I like the keyboard, the feel of the keys. I'm so used to it. And I said to myself, you can't tell yourself you can't dictate. Your readers expect a forecast. You better get good at dictation fast. And I also use technology. My tech is called Evangeline Joy, and same last name as you.
Oh, cool. Well, actually, that's my middle name. My last name is Persian and very difficult for most
Oh,
people to
okay.
pronounce, but yeah.
You're both sunshine in a bottle, so it fits so perfectly. And she taught me some key commands and things. I was using Siri a lot, and now ChatGPT. But
Hmm.
but I will never do AI for my writing. It's got to be me, and I want to use my brain. And
Yeah. You don't need it anyway. It's funny. I was talking to my friend about someone else in the human design space, and she was like, she doesn't like AI because she is AI. Like she can just create, she has this thing in her chart where it's like patterns, logic, figuring out how to like order and organize things. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if she has a lot of Virgo in her chart. And yeah, it's unsurprising to me with your moon in Virgo. It's actually funny. There was I know a Gemini with his moon in Virgo. I was just thinking about like
oh,
how you're like, I better
like
get good
me.
at this. Yeah. Oh, cool. Like
Yeah.
he's,
Well, I have Gemini rising. Yeah.
rising. Oh, okay. Yeah,
It's
that's
the
his.
same though. Everyone should read their rising and their sun sign.
Yeah. So he has a Virgo moon, Gemini rise, Gemini sun, but it's so funny because we were in this group chat and I was saying something about his moon in Virgo and he was like, Virgo moons don't make me money. And I was like, that's a lie. That's exactly why you make so much money.
No, they're so meticulous. And
Yeah.
they wake up every morning. I know I do, saying, this is what I have to accomplish today. And if I don't get it done by 8 o'clock, I just have to keep on going through the night. Sometimes a friend calls, they have a problem, and you want to be on the phone with your friend, but you're pushing the whole day. I never did all-nighters in college. I do them all the time now. I usually go to sleep around 2:33, but at the end of the month, I'm Persephone. In the beginning of the month, it's spring and sunshine and summer. And then I go into Hades
Yeah.
the second half of the month after the, say, 16th, 17th. And I start writing around the clock. I don't do dentist appointments or lunch with friends or anything. I just write.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so we're talking a lot about, like inherent talents and natural ability and things like that. And you already know, I have my son in the 10th house, being a Libra with Cap rising. And so I have a pretty packed 10th and ninth house. So I'm all
Ah,
about that,
and
like,
philosophical that means too. So
yeah.
the ninth house is philosophy.
Scorpio midheaven, so transformation, where can we see
Oh,
And
perfect.
yeah, I love my chart. But
Yeah.
but with all of that said, like, and especially for a lot of people who listen to me, I'm all about, creating what you want in life in a way through a way that works for you, right? And having a better idea of that career path that the stars have somewhat laid out for you based on, your chart, I think is so helpful for people. So if someone were to come to you and ask, like, Susan, I am a little lost right now, or I just want to know, one, like what kind of career path is sort of paved for me. I mean, I obviously we have to work and do like Susan works so hard to fulfill her purpose and everything, but what's kind of been laid out in front of me so I can work with that, and then also how can I like use that to create success? What parts of a chart do you like to look at for
Well,
people first?
the ascendant really sets the profession, especially at the beginning of life. When I was 9 years old, I asked my mother to read my chart. And I was at my grandmother's house, and she had this beautiful garden, and there were lilacs all around us. We were sitting on the bench. And she said, "You're going to write." I said, "Nobody in our family writes for a living." She said, "You will, and I'm going to work on your grammar." And then she said, "The midheaven, which is where the 12 is on a round clock, right at the top. I have Aquarius up there." So
Mm.
she said, as you get closer to 40, 37, 38, 39, some newly invented form of communication, so new we don't know the name of it yet, will change the way you work and be the channel in which you make your ultimate contribution to the world. I will never forget those words. Those were the exact words. And I was thunderstruck. How can you look at a piece of paper and know that? What is this new invention? She said, "Well, we don't know. It's not invented yet." Well, I'm 9 years old. I'm going to drive her crazy. What could it be? She said, "Well, Aquarius is ruled by electricity. So it's something that plugs in the wall. But it's not TV, because TV was my generation. Although I feel you will be on TV, and I am all the time, but not." She said, "That's not the hub of the wheel." And she's right. And she said it's communicative because it's an air sign and you're giving information, but it's this new invention. Well, for days after that, I drove her crazy. And she's washing dishes. She dries her hand. She turns around and says, "All right, I'm going to tell you this. It doesn't make any sense to me, but maybe it will to you someday. There are little dots or lines that go through the air that are invisible. They are attached to your writing. There's a connection. That's all I can tell you." She was predicting the internet. She didn't know it. I didn't know it. But when Time Inc. called me to be on their server, in they called me in July of 1995 and said, "We like we hear about you." About you. Well, the creative director of Warner Books told them about me and said she should be on our website, Pathfinder. That's pre AOL. Pathfinder went away, and AOL bought Timing. But for the first 3 years, the merger hadn't happened. So I was there. That's how I started on the internet. They asked me, "Would you like to be on our servers?" And I knew this was what my mother had predicted. And it was funny. They wanted something short for women every day. I said, oh no, that sounds terrible. I want to change the world and I can't do it at 25 words per sign. And they're looking at me. I said, we must be the best. We are Time Warner. And they're like, what? I hadn't even been hired, but I said, we must be the best. And they said, well, how much would you write? At the time, I said 1,700 words per sign. Now I'm writing upwards of 3,000, 4,000. Gosh, Aquarius was so long this month, so was Sag. Even Pisces was 3,800. I write what I need to write for each sign. And they said, but we can't pay you $1 a word. I said, no, that's okay. I have a job. I will do this job at night. I want to learn about the internet. And I said, all right, well, why would you do all this work? And then I told them what I told you about my mother. And then I was across the table from Harvard, Yale, and Dartmouth. They were all in suits, and they're all, heading up Pathfinder. And my elbows are on the table, and I told them about that this would be my ultimate contribution to the world. And then I had my hands like this, elbows on the table. And I said, don't you see? This is my destiny. Wow. Then they were quiet. And they looked at the head person in the middle. And he looked up and he said, Susan, we're not going to stand in your way. We're going to do what you want. We're going to let you do long. Do what you think is right. You're so passionate. How could we stop you? So go for it. And that's how Astrology Zone was born. It came on their service on December 14th, 1995. So this year, at the end of the year, I'll be there 30 years. Now, of course, I left Time Inc. because they got involved with AOL. And every door was slammed in my face. No one wanted to buy content. And I needed them to pay for it because I just needed some money from it. And also I would have to pay editors. I went to Microsoft. The meeting was not good. They wanted me to cut my content to 100 words per sign. And that wasn't good. I said, I can't really give you a good estimate of how many people will read the column if you change the product. And the way God works is amazing. I went back to my hotel room. It was February. It was pouring rain in Bellevue, Washington. I was very depressed. I had no one willing to take my fledgling little baby, who was now 3 years old, my website. The phone rang as I walked in, and it was my friend who worked for Microsoft, but she was very high level, and I never told anyone I had a friend who reported directly to Gates. She said, how did it go? And I said, not so good, Linda, not good. And I told her who was at the meeting. She said, wait, Larry was at that meeting? He's not going to be with us by next week. He's getting fired. And Melissa, she's never had a great idea. And, she went on with the people and she said, you got to stay away. No, they'll ruin it. Okay. I said, where are you? Can we have dinner tonight? No, I'm in Cupertino. I said, Cupertino? She said, well, we do business with Apple. I said, oh, I'll see you in New York. Don't worry. And I hung up the phone and I called my office. And this is interesting. That week had the luckiest day of the year in it. This year, the luckiest day of the year is June 24th, when Jupiter conjuncts the sun. You should always use it to try to do something hard. So on Planet Susan, I'm thinking I'll go to Bellevue, Washington. I'll make a deal with Microsoft. I'll come back with a letter of intent from our lawyers and everything will be fine. And nothing was fine. But I had gone on Monday and the luckiest day of the year was going to be Saturday. So I have since learned you have to be closer to that day. So I thought, okay, I'll call New York. And there was a big snowstorm. And they said they're closing all 3 airports, Liberty, JFK, and LaGuardia. We're getting 33 inches of snow. You cannot come home. I can't. It's February and I can't come back. I have to stay on the West Coast where it's sunny. Okay. So I hung up the phone and I thought, well, what should I do? I need to stay out here. I should be productive. And then I remembered Apple had written a story about me when I had contacted them. I had said that I didn't like the way Steve Jobs was being portrayed in the press, that the PC people were making fun of him, and that Apple was a silly product and that it would never go anywhere. And I said, I want your logo to put on my front page. And if every publisher had your logo on the front page, because we do use Apple server and laptops and everything Apple at timing, they said, sure, we'll give it to you. And what do you do? I was afraid to tell. I was talking to one of the gang of eight that that Steve had brought back to save Apple, Dan Marushish, and he said, what do you do? And I told him, and he said, oh, Steve told us to watch for people who do interesting things with their Mac. And he had written a story, had gotten a writer, David Graham, to write the story, The Astrologer Who Believes in Apple. So I was calling him to thank him and to ask him if he would have dinner with me in San Francisco with David and his Miss Moneypenny, his right hand executive assistant. And he said, sure. I said, I don't know how to drive. I still don't. I know it's terrible. I hate to
You grew
admit
up in
it.
New York. Like,
I
yeah,
know.
it's
And now we
common.
have Uber. But he said, we'll meet you up there. And on the way down, I was getting calls from other people in the department. Can I come? Can I come? And I said to myself, I have a theory. Aside from your parents who love you unconditionally, there may be five people in this lifetime that will go the ends of the earth for you, that will really help you. And Apple was one of them. And I kept telling them, you got it backwards. I wrote to you because I'm trying to help you, and you keep helping me. You wrote that nice story, and you're sending people over. You kept it on your servers, And he laughed. He said, "Don't you worry." So I said yes to all the people, and I thought, I'll put it on Visa. I'll pay it off. We're going to a Wolfgang Puck, really good restaurant in San Fran, and it was at that dinner they asked me how I was doing, and I said I was kind of in trouble because every door was being slammed in my face. And they said, did you go to InfoSeek? And I said, they won't let me through the switchboard. They think I'm a headhunter. And they said, well, those are all former Apple people there. I can get you an appointment. She did. The appointment went great. And Walt Disney Company bought that InfoSeek company, and we're coming in with their pots and pans 4 weeks later. So I wound up working for the Walt Disney Company and learning from them. And after 3 years at Time, 3 years at Walt Disney, I was ready to cut the cord. Well, and Disney said we shouldn't be in the internet business, so we're not renewing any contracts after 3 years. They told me that near the end of my contract. So it was time to fund it myself. But I had
Mhm.
6 years under my belt,
Mhm.
and I was able to do it. But I prayed to God for a direction, not to fix it, but to give me a direction. And that day, when I heard Disney was not going to give me a contract, I was worried. I had two children, a husband who never worked. I had them in private school in New York, and I had a staff, and they were depending on me. And I asked God for a direction. And so I opened my eyes. I'm in the living room all by myself. And usually my coffee table has books or flowers on it. It didn't have anything on it except the New York Times. And so my eyes kind of fall on the paper, and it says Stephen King making a fortune. And you have to turn the paper, the fold, to see the other half in ebooks. I said, I could make more than him. And I had heard on the street, which is always better information than what you read, that Barnes and Noble was hot to trot for ebooks. So I called Warner Books. I said, do you want to do an ebook? And they went, no. Ooh, no. And they wouldn't say that now, of course. But in
No.
2002, 2001, 2002, when I was calling, they said, you can call. I said, my contract says I have to give you rights of first refusal. They said, no, call Barnes and Noble. Go ahead. So now I immediately call Barnes and Noble, and I don't know who to talk to. So I asked the operator. She said, I put you through to the CEO. And he picks up, where'd
Oh.
you go? I'm like, oh. And I said, well, I heard a rumor that you were into ebooks. Is that true? Oh, yes. And Susan, we know about you. You do? Oh, wow. You live in Manhattan. Yes, yes. Could you come now? Now, sure. Yes. Let me put on a dress. I put on a dress, a little makeup, took a taxi, and walked out with a 5 book contract, and that saved Astrology Zone.
Ugh, I love that. And okay, so I obviously I'm gonna ask this
So
because this is what I've
always
been asking the
pray
entire
for a
time.
direction, and
Yeah.
God will give it to you.
Yes, I love that. And then also, did you see like was there when that kind of thing happened when like the doors were getting slammed in your face, when the kind of the rug was getting pulled, not pulled out from you, like you knew it was going to happen,
Yeah.
right? That the
No,
contract
I
was going
had
to
some
end.
bad aspects. I knew
You
it.
did.
But when you have bad aspects, you don't roll over and let the bulldozer go over you. You have to come up with ideas to cope with it,
Hmm.
and that's where your growth comes from. After a while, if you fight enough of these really difficult things, if you love something, you're going to save it. I think all of us in our life, at some point, you'll be asked, how much do you love your job? In this case, how much did I love my website and doing it? And how much do you love your children? What are you willing to sacrifice? How much do you love your partner? How much do you love your city? How much do you love democracy and the country you live in? All these things, not all at once, will be presented to you. And you have to put your cards on the table and say, this means something to me, and I will do whatever it takes to make it work, to or to help that child who needs help, or to to save my website, or whatever is on the table at that point. We all have crisis points in our life, and when I had those big operations, I had to keep working as an agent for commercial photographers, and I couldn't go see them. In those days, the internet wasn't as big, and so I had to find a way to have them remember my photographers to for big jobs. I needed those jobs. And I talked to one of my competitor agents, and she said, "Oh boy, you're in a crisis. Thank everybody for the blood that they gave you." I said, "But they didn't give me any. I didn't ask for any." "That doesn't matter. Thank them anyway." So I did. Thank you for the outpouring from the industry. Thank you. I had, I've had 40 blood transfusions in my life, but at the time I only had 18. And I thanked them and they said, wait, or they called me up. You didn't ask. I said, well, I had enough. I said, well, what's going on? I said, well, I can't come see you, but I can send a messenger if you need to see the portfolio. And I'm going to keep working. After my operation, I was not allowed to leave the house for 1 full year. And my doctor, who I loved with all my heart, he said, well, we did the operation, but I'm going to say something, and I'm going to say it twice so you don't forget. If you go out and fall, you die. You fall, you die. We can never go in that leg again. Because I was in the ICU a lot afterwards. And I said, okay. So I had to stay home and wait for the bone to grow around the steel. And I was housebound for 1 full year. I remember the first time I went out. I had friends from California. There were 3 girls, and we went to the Rainbow Room when it was still nice. They've made some changes, but we all New Yorkers don't agree with. But it was really beautiful, and we had hors d'oeuvres. And we were, after an hour and a half, 2 hours, we were done. And the 2 girls went to get the coat, and one girl stayed with me. And I looked out the window and I started to cry. And she said, what's wrong? Are you in pain? I said, no, 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 no. I never thought I'd see anything this beautiful again. It's just so beautiful. It's like you can see all of Manhattan. You can see the Empire State Building right in front here down the end of the island. You can see it all so well. It's just so beautiful. And that was my first night out after a year of being in the house. I always felt like I needed a loop to look out the window to see more. I was even looking at traffic cams. What did 86th Street look like? What did 23rd Street look like? Was there
Yeah.
snow there? I mean,
Oh gosh, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm a homebody, but I I need to get outside. Yeah. You have a great memory. Has anyone ever told you that? Like very detailed. Like I saw this line of that's because I'm the same way, but I don't see it a lot in other
It's the
people.
Virgo
Yeah.
photographic. It
Yeah.
helps a lot with astrology because you can't just take one aspect. And that's why I write my calendar, which you'll get a copy. And right now they're on sale for
Thank you.
$20. They're usually 27.
Nice.
And but I do have to charge for shipping because they weigh a pound. I print them on such heavy paper, but they're really beautiful. And
Yeah.
they're real collector's items. And I can see every pore of the year. I can see the patterns and I remember the dates. And it's the only way I can see what's happening in 2025 or any year. But it was funny. I wrote in my newsletter, which is right above I have the horoscope, but right above it is a letter of what's going on, maybe in my life or behind the scenes or in the stars. And I had said, I didn't write the year ahead this year because I would have had to tell you that the official start of the year would be May 26, 2025, that I had never seen so many retrogrades of the so-called personal planets. Those are Mercury, Mars, and Venus. And what made it unusual is sometimes they overlap with each other. They weren't.
Hmm.
It started in November, the day before Thanksgiving, on November 25th, Mercury went retrograde until December 15th, which is really tough for retailers because that's the shopping season. And Mars went retrograde December 5th all the way to February 23rd. Now, Mars is the action planet. It's when you chop up all the vegetables and you're making your soup and you turn on the gas, but there is no gas, there is no electricity, there is no
Mm.
power. Nothing, it's the gas you put in your car. No gas, no go. So Mars retrograde is a very frustrating um, planet when retrograde. It happens every 2 years. It's not that often. And we're kind of surprised. Why aren't things clicking into place? Why is everything taking longer than it should? Because
Mhm.
we have to supply the energy that Mars usually assists us with. All right, Mars went direct. March 1st, Venus goes direct. She rules, of course, beauty, love, but also money and pampering and luxury, parties and beautiful jewels and things that we get from other people or we buy for ourselves. It also rules like Botox and things like that. And you should never do any cosmetic dentistry or anything when Venus is retrograde.
Hmm.
She will be retrograde until April 12th. So, but the problem is no planet instantly jumps to life the day it goes direct. As a matter of fact, it's the most wonky, the front and back dates. And I have friends who say, "Oh, Mercury's direct, fine." Oh, and then Mercury went direct too. It was retrograde from March 15th to April 7th. But people were starting on the 8th to sign contracts. I'm like, no, give it a space of days, give it a little room because it's almost like an ocean liner ship going down the river and realizing it has to turn around. And it's like, those engines. It's so hard to make a U turn when you're a cruise ship. Same thing with a planet.
Hmm.
And it takes a lot of energy and it's not stable. So I thought, okay, by the end of April, but then we have a tough new moon at the end of April and a tough full moon April 16th, but a glorious, beautiful new moon May 26th. That is the official beginning of 2025. Blue skies, open road. Finally, good aspects coming. Eclipses behind us. We had one on March 13th and one on March 29th. We do have a tough one September 7th in Pisces, no, Virgo. And then we have a nice new moon. New moons are better than full moons because they open up a new door. A full moon closes things. So sometimes we get sentimental, something is ending. I'm always sentimental when something ends. I'm a romantic. But so, we have some adjustment in September, but for all practical purposes, we have a really good, strong year from May 26th onward.
I love to hear that. I was telling Susan this beforehand. I was like, oh, Jesus. Like it's been, because up until now, it hasn't been bad. Like when the new year struck, actually, I felt like I got out of a huge funk that I'd been in for a very long time regarding my creativity. But at the same things, it has felt like it's been all breaks, no gas in a lot of ways. I don't know if other people have been feeling that, but I do know with the eclipse seasons that have been happening this year in particular, my friend, especially my very sensitive friends, have been on the floor. They're like, "How much longer? This is
Well,
so
I
rough."
know they were shocking.
Yeah.
I know. I'm in the middle of construction and I didn't expect overages. We hate your pipes. We had to change all the plumbing in your apartment upstairs. I'm buying copper pipes for a fortune. It's all monopoly money right now. It's like not even real,
Yeah.
and it's frightening, but you don't have much of a choice. I'm not going to tell them, no, put the bad pipes back. No, of course not.
Yeah.
They said the same about the electricity because I would turn on the air conditioner and then forget that it was on, and summer, and turn on the vacuum cleaner and it would blow out the whole
Oh
house.
God.
Or I have the dishwasher on, which is so quiet you don't hear it, and then you heat up some tea in your microwave and blow out the whole house. So you said, "Oh yeah, we know. We put in all new panel. You have 26 outlets in your new apartment, Susan."
Nice.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm excited
I'm
because
excited
I like
for
to be able
you.
to plug in wherever I am sitting.
Yeah, it's the best. Um, awesome. Well, listen, I know that we don't have a ton of time left, but
Oh,
would you, and I know
I
that
can
you
talk to
don't,
you forever.
I can talk, I don't want to let you go. I told Valerie it was an hour and I don't want to,
No, it's
over.
okay as
Oh, it's
long as
okay.
yeah.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, because I have a couple of other questions. Well,
Okay, good.
my first question personally for me, I hate doing this to my guests, but sometimes I'm just like, can you tell me a little bit about my chart? So with the Cap rising, it's funny because
Oh, you moving?
no, but everybody says that with the chart this
Wow.
year.
You should read Capricorn. I've
Yeah.
I've shared so much of my own experience. I have new sympathy for people who move or renovate. I had
Oh,
no idea how hard it was.
yeah.
And I will do anything for a friend who's moving or fixing things up. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
And the Capricorn has Saturn and Neptune going into their fourth house of home. So
Hmm.
you have to not leave the room when there's a candle burning. You have to watch fire, fire
Okay.
safety, and have, they always show you on TV, the fire extinguishers, and they time the person how long it takes her to take the pin out, and they're hard. Nobody teaches you this, and it's no time to learn when your stove is going up in flames because Saturn's going into Aries, and so is Neptune, and Neptune is water and snow and ice and fog, but it's also gas.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, I did do a run. I did paint my house, and I am gonna be eventually, like, probably doing the garage soon. Because I actually just moved in here in November, and I love this. It's a
Oh,
house.
you did just move. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I
good.
did before. Yeah, in
Because if
November.
one of your readers wants to, listeners, if one of your listeners wants to buy a house or rent a house or even a vacation cottage, with Saturn going in, it'll be expensive. But Saturn's just giving a preview and it will be gone by September 1st. So if they don't do it right now, and I wrote about this in Capricorn's forecast, then decide to do it between September and February 13th of next year because Saturn will pull back and open up more opportunity for you. So the other little Capricorns can make note of that if they have to move. I think the statistics on how many people move in a given year, at least in America, is big. I
Oh
had no
yeah.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate moving though because I was like looking around at my house and I'm like, I'm not doing this again. Not for the foreseeable
Well,
future.
you
And
know
the
what? It makes
renovations,
you throw
yeah,
things out. And I hate the process, but I love the results. So
yeah, me
I
too.
think it is good for the soul, but I felt a little overwhelmed. And Valerie, my assistant, went on vacation, and so did my housekeeper. But when she came back, we had a box, and she'd go, to stay or go, to stay or go, over and over, to stay or go. And if you have a buddy like that, you get so much done. We get done with that box. Now we do another box. No, the movers are coming.
Yeah. Stay on track.
And you don't want to pay for things you don't need to move, and
Yeah.
you give a lot to charity and you give a lot to the people around you, friends. And I bet when I move back upstairs, I will again be weeding out more. It's a big process, but it's necessary. And I gave away clothes. It was funny. I was having dinner with a friend, and two friends, and I said, she said, "Well, how much of your clothes do you want to give away?" I'm like, "None. I like them all. It's okay." They said, "We guarantee you're wrong." And when I started moving, they were right. Also, I worked so hard that I hadn't noticed my apartment really needed a redo, an upgrade. And when I had the small flood in my bedroom, I said to the contractor, "Well, we have to change the floor in the whole house because it has to match." And he said, "Yes, you have to move everything out." I said, "Even the closet, especially the closet." I said, "What about the kitchen? The stove has to go because the dust will create such problems with the dishwasher. Everything has to move. Everything." Well, if you're going to do that for the floors, you're going to do more than that. You're
Hmm.
going to upgrade your kitchen and bathrooms, and then it just happens,
Yeah. Didn't you say in the because I read a little bit of the Capricorn April forecast. I haven't moved through the entire
Mhm.
thing, but didn't you say that it was a Pluto transit that affected
Well,
you?
yes, Pluto. I have a friend, Bob Marks, who's an astrologer. He has a website. He's in his late 80s. He said, "Oh, Susan, you're going to be throwing things out." I don't have time to throw things out, Bob. Now the flood hadn't happened yet. I have so many assignments and there's so much pressure. You have to hand everything in on time. He said, "You're going to be throwing a lot." I kept thinking of him when I was sitting there with Valerie and like, okay, that's going. And he was right. Pluto makes you just sort out what you need, and you think you can't live without it and you find out you can. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's the great sweep awayer or what is good. I guess you could like Pluto, the great broom,
Terminator.
right? Cosmic
Yeah.
broom. Yeah. Eliminator.
Terminator.
Yeah. Vacuum. I'm gonna call Pluto the cosmic
Yeah.
vacuum from now on. What
So
I had
you have
wanted
the Libra rising, and your career is on fire. All the Libras are so lucky right now. They have Mars until April 17th, and then you'll have more time for social life, which is very important to Libra. My daughter has Libra rising, and friends are everything for her. But
okay.
there's on June 9th of this year,
Hmm.
very close,
Hmm.
Jupiter, the giver of gifts and luck, will go into your house of honors, awards, achievement, fame for the first time in 12 years and stay almost 13 months until June 30th, 2026. And this is all about career success. Just fantastic. So this is the year, even to present ideas to the powers that be, to give you approval to go ahead on something new, because you're starting a whole new cycle in your career. All the Libras are, or the Libra risings are. It's a really good time to be a Libra.
Nice.
But before that happens, I want you to take a long trip, because after June 9th, you won't be able to go anywhere. You'll be
Okay.
too
Good to
busy.
know.
But
Good to
like
know.
in May, to go on a beautiful, foreign location, somewhere you have never been or have and miss, like Paris or something like that, you know. But it should be foreign. Now, Canada does count as foreign. Any place that requires a passport for entry is counting as foreign. But that's the area of your chart that's so lit up right this minute.
Oh, that's exciting for me. I love that. And here I was literally just gonna ask you with Cap risings, like, because the thing is that what's interesting is like when you have a sign like Virgo or Cancer, or I mean, even like Sagittarius, but definitely like Gemini being your rising sign, determining what you're here to do. And obviously the midheaven affects that as well. But with Capricorn, it's with me, I'm like Capricorns are literally just about work. Like
Oh,
it's just
they're great
industry.
managers. Lucille
Okay.
Ball was Leo with Capricorn rising,
Oh, I could so see that for
and
her.
they called that the empire builder.
Yeah.
Capricorn makes great leaders. Plato wrote about Capricorn that they were the philosopher king and that they took good care of the people in their employ. They would never just fire someone without helping them find a new job, or they were like the ideal boss. They were cool in a crisis. They were practical and realistic. And I think being realistic in life, it's the one thing my mother gave me. That Virgo moon really anchors me. And my father would say, you should have high hopes, but if they're so high, you're going to be constantly disappointed. They have to be within, the realm of reality. We have a saying, the 95-year-old lady will not get the lead in Swan Lake, in the chart. She can have the greatest career aspects. That's probably not going to happen if she's a ballerina or was one. So it has to be within reality. But to still aim high and stretch and continue to stretch. And I can tell you when you're getting closer. See, Capricorn's been working very hard this year. Assignments have been coming in. Just an extremely busy atmosphere, and possibly to the point where you needed to hire some more helpers to report to you. And small businesses usually have trouble finding people that are qualified, but that they can afford. But you were able to get both. There was no problem in that because you had Jupiter there. Now you'll have more time for romance and for your partner, or if you need to get an agent, any kind of collaboration is really great. Or in love to get married, that kind of thing. Are you married now?
No.
Okay, so you never know. It just takes one person.
I was just Voxing. I was using Voxer, the voice message app, with my assistant. By the way, Danielle, if you're listening, apparently you're so lucky to have me as your contracted employer as a Capricorn
Definitely.
rising. You're so welcome. Yeah, I was voice messaging her. And I was like, honestly, all I need right now is just a funny, goofy, cute guy who understands there is absolutely no desire for commitment
Well,
at this point.
Capricorn is the sign of the comic. I read this that
Really?
people laugh about what's really important to them in life. And if a joke is about something that's not important, it just goes by the boards. You know, but
Oh.
if they tap into something dearly important to you, then you laugh. Saturday Night Live does that a lot.
Mm.
They push buttons that
Yeah,
that we've been thinking
absolutely.
about.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I think of like the funniest, like the people who, and again, I'm a Libra sun, so like I love Geminis, and I have my sun at 24 degrees, and so it's in the third decan with Gemini aspects, and I just love talking to them, and I think they're so funny, and it's interesting because I never would think that Capricorns would be described that way as comics. We're always described as so serious.
A lot of the big comics are Capricorn. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because they're serious, because they know what's important to all of us. Yeah. And they can poke fun. They do have a very good sense of humor, the little Capricorns, definitely. Oh, I love them. And they're so hardworking. You can really depend on a Capricorn.
That's
You
right.
don't even have to ask a Capricorn, did you get that done? Of course they did. The minute you turned away, they finished it.
Yeah.
No, they're always headed for success because they rule the 10th house, naturally rule the 10th house of fame and honors. So it's one of the three signs that gives back to society.
Hmm.
Capricorn through work and in industry, Aquarius through humanitarian activities and charities, and Pisces on a one-to-one basis. The lady in 4K, you go upstairs before you go to work and open all her jars, or ask her if she needs any groceries before you come home. Very sensitive one-on-one people. Actually, Pisces is symbolized by the old man and the cane. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, that we all mingle as one in the oceans of Pisces, where we all are together. It is the universal, that Pisces symbolizes. And there is no difference between ethnicity or religion or anything like that. That we are, Pisces sees what binds us together, the similarities.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, you're one of the last three where the last three, well, did you know that every sign is a compilation of the signs that came before it?
Yeah, my other friend who's an astrologer told me that, and that blew my mind, but it made so much sense. He was like, "Yeah," and then
Mhm.
Libra builds on Virgo, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Makes a lot of
And
sense."
we don't forget, it's so funny. You just went through Pluto and Capricorn and you learned many things about leadership and power and influence. But you don't lose it when the planet leaves. You hold it with you. People say, "Do I turn into a pumpkin?" No, 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 no.
Sorry, party's over. Time. Yeah,
We're in the age of Aquarius now, and you can really
Mhm.
feel it with the AI and with the robots and with everything that's being planned. And you really can't even imagine what's coming because, we couldn't imagine what we already have. I mean, the phone being such a big part of our life, it's like a small computer. And but before the age of Aquarius was the age of Pisces, which was the age of religion. And we see it in the Renaissance paintings, and, an age lasts 2,400 years because the earth spins in an elliptical kind of orbit through space. Imagine a dinner plate that's holding all the planets in our solar system, and it's spinning. Even though it's spinning in a circle, the dinner plate is spinning in an elliptical kind of way. And I talk about this on the homepage of my website. It's called it's what we're talking about is the precession of the equinox. And am I a Virgo or am I a Libra? Because every 72 years, the constellations move 1 degree. Now, in Vedic astrology, they do recognize that shift. In Western astrology, we don't. We feel astrology was born into our minds at a certain time and place, and that since it's circular, everything will come back to where it was before. There is no reason to adjust for it. And any computer can adjust for it. I mean, I can do it in 2 seconds on my laptop, on my software. I mean, it's not a thing that astrologers don't know about. Of course, we do, but a Western astrology does not precess the chart unless we're precessing it for a solar return. But I don't want to get too technical.
Another time. Yeah. Everyone, you can
We
look
might
it
go
up,
run
guys.
away and say, "I can't stand it. My hair's on fire." But one thing I found that's really interesting, and I haven't heard any astrologers say this. Sometimes you'll meet a person and say, "I don't feel like a Virgo or a Leo or whatever." And if they're born at night after the sun has gone down, even if it only went down a minute ago or 5 hours ago, it doesn't matter. You look to the moon because the moon takes on special prominence because it comes out at night. And Vedic people understand that. And that's where I started doing research. Now, my own daughter is a Pisces married to a Leo, and his name is Leo.
Mm.
And he's in the arts. And a while back, he was an actor. He was in Wired. He was the drug dealer in Wired. But now he does design work for Supreme and does a lot of creative work for them. And I thought, would Chrissy's water put out his fire? She's Pisces, he's Leo, but she has three planets in Aquarius, which is perfect with Leo. And her moon is there. And she was born at night, 7:39 p.m. after the sun went down. In February, the sun goes down kind of early. So that's something, if a listener is saying, I don't feel like my sign. Well, first of all, you must know your rising sign because that's has a very strong coloring to your personality. But also look at that moon and see if you were born at night, after the sun went down, because that may unlock kind of an epiphany. And Christy is very Aquarian.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. I don't hear that talked about a lot. I know about day and night charts, but do you mind if I ask, do you have a day or a night chart? Were you born during the day?
Yes,
Yeah.
early
Okay.
morning. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
10
yeah. This is one of those things with astrology that I've always thought was fascinating, which is people who say, and Susan, this is part of why I've always loved how in depth you go with your forecasts.
a.m.
And why, when somebody at the companies that you were working for said 100 words at most, I was like, no, 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 that's not gonna do it
It's
justice.
just not me.
It's not you, and it's not what, the gift that you're here to give. But more than that, it's like one of the things that you'll hear, I'm sure, as an astrologer, you've heard this throughout your life is, well, horoscopes are so general. This could apply to anyone.
But I'm
No, it
not,
couldn't.
because I even name birthdays that will feel it more than others.
Hmm.
You know? And even with eclipses, you get maybe 2 years of a family of eclipses. Every 5.5 months, they come by in pairs. We're just finishing up with Aries Libra. And not every Libra or Aries felt every single one of those eclipses, but if it was close to either their sun, moon, or a planet in their natal chart, they did within 5 degrees plus or minus, so 10 degree span, you would feel it, And but yeah, I mean, it's very mathematical. I don't know
Hmm.
why I'm getting so many phone calls. I'm sorry.
The world needs you. It's because they're
No.
like, you're hugging Susan. But I do think that this would be a great place to wrap up. And everyone listening, I'm sure this has inspired you to go a little more in depth with your chart because there's so much cool stuff in
Well, on
astrology.
my chart, you can do it for free.
Hmm.
It says do your birth chart, but you must know the time to the minute, and it should be on the microfiche, the handwritten birth certificate, not the one you get at the DMV.
Hmm.
If you were born in another country, actually, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, helps you get your birth certificate. There's a
Ooh.
map, and it used to be only the United States. Now it's expanded. And if you're having trouble, write to me, Susan Miller at astrologyzone.com. We'll try to help you. Um, it really matters. So, and then you have to put in where you were born. If you live, say, let's make believe, in a rural town and your mother went to the city to have you, you have to mention like Philadelphia or something, where you were born in that hospital. But like me, I was born in New York and right in the middle of the city, so it was the same.
Hmm.
But if your mom had to travel to the hospital, then you have to put in where the hospital was, because we convert everybody to Greenwich Mean Time England so that we have a common denominator. Because someone born in New York at 10 a.m., it's different than in LA at 10 a.m. It's a different time zone. So we have to make it even. And that's part of the math of astrology. We're putting everybody at Greenwich Mean Time.
If it's within the same time zone, right? Like if you live within
Yeah,
the same time zone, but you're just moving to
yeah.
another part of the same time zone, it should be fine, right?
Yeah, but we're definitely, the computer does all that for us.
Yeah.
And I worked with the man who wrote the code for me on my site, so I know it's accurate. Always use Placidus tropical algorithm. There's the chance to use whole house system. That's only if you don't know the time of your birth. You won't know your rising sign, but you will know where all the planets were that day. And by the way, do this on your laptop, because then you can print out my interpretation of your chart. I wrote a lot. Right? So
Unsurprising.
you'll get like a whole report for free. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything, all
Thank
your
you.
wisdom. It was so, so nice to talk to you.
I had so much fun. We must get together.
We have
By
to.
the way, I have two apps on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Astrology's own horoscopes, which people love. It's $4.99 a month, but it's worth it. There's so much, all my essays and everything is on there. And then I also have Moonlight Phases, which teaches you never to do something important when the moon is void of course. Sounds like a disease, so I made the moon so cute, with a little rosebud mouth and eyelashes. But if you put your finger on the word void, of course, it up comes questions and answers that I wrote. It just goes right into answering all your questions, and people love it. And it's only $8 for the. Gosh, it goes through 2050 and it's no extra cost. It's $8, and people really love it. So I hope you'll check it out on the Apple App Store or Google Play. Moonlight Phases by Susan Miller. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have the links down below for that so people can easily access it. And then any other way to find Susan, that's going to be down below. You can find her at
Just
astrologyzone.com.
write to us, and we
Yeah.
read every letter,
Oh,
every single letter we read. Yeah, sometimes at the end of the day, Valerie reads them to me so that I don't have to use my hands. I get a rest around 5 o'clock. It's kind of, I look forward to that. And I look forward to doing personal appearances. And if someone has a club that wants me to come anywhere, I'll get on a plane. I love to fly. The last time I went to LA, it was only 4 hours and 20 minutes landing. I said to the attendant, can't we stay up here a couple more hours? Like, I haven't finished Virgo yet. Could we spin around a little longer? She said, you don't want to land. I'm like, no, I love it up here. It's
that's
so
yeah.
quiet. I love it. But yeah, I really love to fly, and I love to meet the readers. I'm alone a lot writing, so
Mhm.
it's a real treat when I go out and answer questions. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well,
Okay,
Susan, you
thank
rock,
you.
of course.
Okay, you just
Uh,
do.
everyone listening, you rock, and I will talk to you next time.